Welcome back to another daily drop here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm THI publisher Andrew Jones. It's midweek, so I'm, of course, flying solo with you guys on this drop. And the topic, as you already know, is very simple. Coaching them like they lost. That's the title of this one. Before I get into it, very quick reminder, this show is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. We'll have a little bit from them coming up in a few minutes. Okay, coaching them like they lost. What does that mean? Well, Mack Brown has been saying for the last month, since probably the App State game, when I recall maybe the first time hearing him say it, is that when the team practices on Sunday, the day after a game, they go over the day before, they put everything to bed, and then they steer the nose in the direction of the next opponent. But one of the things that the staff has done this season, and Brown has insisted on it, and it's certainly a change from before, and I'll get into that in a minute. He wants his staff coaching the team like they lost. So even after beating Syracuse 40-7, Mack Brown wanted his coaches to coach the players on Sunday like they lost to the Orange. Now, when you get a punt blocked, you have something to go by. When you're 2 for 7 scoring touchdowns in the red zone, even though they got 4 field goals, there's something to go by. I think what's interesting is that this is a sign of the elevated standard and approach. It's sort of like grading by a curve. You coach by a curve. When Brown first got there, he primarily had Larry Fedora players, and they had a solid year that first year. There were kids that were starving to win, so they had their attention. They had some older guys and some good players. But as he started building the program with all of his guys and fully embedding his culture into the program, part of that is growth because it's a rebuilding process. So in 2021, maybe they didn't coach to the standard that they do now because that team wasn't equipped to handle that standard. So they coached them to that. Last year, they raised the bar, but there was some newness on defense. For example, Gene Chizik as the defensive coordinator. And there were some issues with him getting back into the college game, the guys learning some of the new terminology, the new defense, and they had some struggles, as everybody knows. This year's different. This is an old team. It's a veteran bunch. There are a ton of guys on defense that have played a lot of snaps. As I've said a few times, I've written it, said it in some of these different shows. When the week of the South Carolina game, there were 17 defensive Tar Heels that had played at least 700 snaps in college, and there were 14 Tar Heels that had played at least 1,000 snaps in college on the defensive side of the ball. 6 of them, college graduates. So you coach differently when the people you're coaching are different. They're older now. Cedric Gray's a senior, and he's a sponge. Kamen Rucker's a senior. He's a sponge. Elijah Hussey comes over from East Tennessee State. He's a sponge. Don Chapman's a college graduate. He's a sponge. Gio Biggers, college graduate. He's a sponge. I mean, they have guys that can take a plan and without a whole lot of additional repeating of this is what you do, they can implement it. And Saturday was Exhibit A against Syracuse. The execution of Gene Chizik's game plan to near perfection was, in my opinion, the best coaching / execution of anything we've seen in Mack Brown Part 2. And that includes some great offensive performances. Sometimes those great offensive performances, they just simply out-willed somebody or rolled them over. This was game planning at an exceptionally high level, and this was execution at an exceptionally high level. Yet they come back to practice the next day, and they're pointing out the things they can do better. And they're coaching them up as if they lost the game. In fact, when we talked to Mack Brown during Monday's press conference, he made a point of the middle 10 minutes of the game that he's emphasized a lot. The last 5 minutes of the first half, first 5 minutes of the second half, they lost 7-3. So they know this club has a very, very high ceiling, and they're coaching him to that ceiling, which is why you coach a team as if they lost, even when they beat a quality opponent by 33 points. I'm going to get more into that in just a minute, but before I do, let's go ahead and hear a word from our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy.
Yes, guys, we are so excited to be partnered with Underdog Fantasy. And we decided to partner with Underdog because it's the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and it's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry right now as well. And Underdog Fantasy has so much to offer, including their Pick'em game. And in Pick'em, you pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. It's so easy to play. Just pick 2 to 5 stats of your favorite players and choose whether they'll go higher or lower. And you can 20x your money by going just 5 for 5. They also have a Best Ball Mania. If you think you know football, you need to check this one out. This year's Best Ball Mania has $15 million in total prizes up for grabs, with the winner taking home $3 million. So sign up today with the promo code HEEL, HEEL, and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with that promo code HEAL to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Must be 18 plus and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms do apply. And if you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ncpgambling.org. Back to the show.
Okay, so I wrote a column after the game Saturday night about the standard. And I find this to be fascinating because I've been around a lot of teams before, both college, both football and basketball in college. I've been around a lot of championship basketball teams. I've covered Carolina's last, 4 national champions? 3 national champions. I've covered their last 5 national championship game appearances, their last 6 Final Fours. I've covered Duke during this period, 2010 Duke team that won a national championship. I've covered a lot of stuff. I've seen the culture of championship teams, and I've seen how great coaches handle teams that can go a little bit higher. They're already high, but get them to go a little bit higher. And I'm seeing Mac and his staff doing that with this team right now. They're 5-0. They have an average margin of victory of 20.5 points over 4 Power 5 teams they've played. They've allowed 13 points. The defense has allowed 13 points in the 4 second halves against Power 5 teams. But they're still pushing because they know they have to get better, and they know in order to reach their goals and their potential, and those go hand in hand with this group right now, that they have to get better, can and will likely get better. They have Miami coming up this weekend. It's going to be a test. Who knows what the Hurricanes' psyche is going to be like coming into this game, given how they lost Saturday night. But the Tar Heels aren't worried about that. They're worried more about themselves. And that's what the great Duke teams I covered did. That's what the great Carolina teams I covered did. Even Maryland 2002 basketball team, I covered them a lot. And they worried about themselves far more than anything else. We do what we do, we're going to be okay. And that's what this Carolina football team has become. Fix your own mistakes. We worry about us, and everything else will take care of itself. Of course, they're going to game plan. We saw that with Garrett Schrader. But the key is be who we are and be a better version of it every week. I think it's fascinating, and it's really neat to watch because that hasn't been the message the last 4 years, but it is now. And that is why Carolina fans should really understand and believe that they know that this ceiling is very high. The coaches think it's high, and they're coaching to that ceiling now. They're not coaching to 8-4. They're coaching to something much bigger. And I think that that's a pretty neat thing to cover. And you guys as Carolina fans, it should be a pretty neat thing to follow as fans because you haven't had this very often. Certainly not since 1997. Anyway, I think this is a cool thing to watch. Keep an eye out for more of this moving forward. I certainly will. I may even write something about it down the road, sort of a retrospective on it, because it's a very, very fascinating part to this season that is filled with storylines. Thank you to Underdog Fantasy for once again sponsoring us. They're going to be with us for the whole football season. So if you're into that stuff, go on over there. They got a great deal going. As Jacob said in our promo, if you like this video, if you like the fact that the coaches are coaching like they lost, go ahead and click like if you think this team has tremendous potential. and has a chance to do very significant things, go ahead and click like. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't. Share the video with all your Carolina friends. Let them know we're here because we upload a ton. And that's why you need to hit the notification bell so you get an update every time we post something, which is often. Anyway, I'm AJ, and I'm going to see you guys tomorrow.